Have you ever walked out of a grocery store holding two flimsy plastic bags, looked at your receipt, and felt a sudden pit in your stomach because you just spent $80 on what looks like absolutely nothing? Or maybe you've had that moment at a drive-thru where you order the same combo meal you've been getting since high school, but when they tell you the total, you almost choke because it's somehow double what you remember paying. It's a weird feeling, right? You check your bank account and the number seems fine. You got your 3% raise this year, so technically you're making more money than ever. But for some reason, you feel poorer. You feel like you're running on a treadmill that's slowly speeding up, and no matter how hard you sprint, you're slowly slipping off the back. Here's the thing, you aren't crazy and you aren't imagining it. There's a silent, invisible hand reaching into your pocket every single day, taking a slice of your hard-earned money without you even noticing until it's too late. It's not the IRS and it's not your Netflix subscription. It's something much more dangerous because it doesn't send you a bill. My name is Mr. Invests, and I spend way too much time thinking about the hidden economic forces that keep regular people broke. If you're someone who feels like your paycheck is shrinking even though the number on the check stays the same, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Now, usually when people talk about losing money, they think about a stock market crash or getting scammed by some guy in his DMs promising crypto millions. But the reality is the biggest threat to your wealth isn't a market crash. It's the slow, steady erosion of your money's value through inflation. And I know, as soon as I say the word inflation, your eyes probably glaze over. You're thinking about boring economists in gray suits talking about the consumer price index on the news. But you need to wake up, because this isn't just an economic term. It is a tax. It is a tax on your savings, a tax on your salary, and a tax on your future. And the worst part? You voted for it. Or at least the system you live in depends on it. Think of it like this. Imagine you have a bucket of water that represents your life savings. You worked hard to fill that bucket, carrying it back and forth from the well day after day. Now imagine someone drilled a tiny microscopic hole in the bottom of that bucket. You can't really see the water leaking out because it's happening so slowly, drop by drop. But if you leave that bucket alone for 10 years, you're going to come back and find it half empty. That is exactly what is happening to the cash sitting in your savings account right now. Here's what most people don't realize about this invisible tax. It completely warps your perception of reality. We are biologically wired to think in nominal terms. That means we look at the number on the bill. If you have $10,000 in the bank today and you have $10,000 in the bank next year, your brain says, "Great, I didn't lose any money." But that is a lie. That is a mathematical lie that keeps poor people poor. If inflation is running at 5%, that $10,000 is actually only worth $9,500 in purchasing power a year later. You didn't spend a dime, but $500 worth of value just evaporated into thin air. If the government sent you a bill for $500 just for having a savings account, you would be rioting in the streets. You'd be furious. But because it happens silently through higher prices at the pump and the grocery store, you just shrug and say, "I guess things are getting expensive." And look, I'm not just trying to scare you with theories here. Let's look at the actual numbers, because the math is honestly terrifying when you zoom out. Let's say you're a responsible person. You save $50,000 for your retirement and you stick it under your mattress, or in a standard bank account earning 0.01% interest, which is basically the same thing as a mattress. If we have an average inflation rate of just 3%, which is historically pretty normal, in 20 years, that $50,000 will only buy you about $27,000 worth of goods. You literally lost nearly half your wealth by doing absolutely nothing wrong. You saved. You were responsible. But because you didn't understand the rules of the game, the invisible tax ate your lunch. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Mr. Invests, but inflation has been high lately. It'll go back down, right? Well, here's the uncomfortable truth that politicians don't like to talk about. The system is designed to have inflation. It's a feature, not a bug. Central banks literally target a 2% inflation rate. They want your money to lose value. Why? Because if your money loses value, you are motivated to spend it or invest it rather than hoarding it. It keeps the economic engine running.
But if you are just a regular person trying to save for a house or a car, you are essentially swimming upstream against a current that is designed to push you backward. Let's dig a little deeper into the psychology of why we let this happen. It's something called the money illusion. It's this cognitive bias where we tend to view wealth in terms of face value rather than purchasing power. It's why you feel good getting a 2% raise when inflation is 4%. You see a bigger number on your paycheck, so your brain releases a little hit of dopamine. Yay, more money! But in reality, you effectively took a 2% pay cut. Your boss is paying you less in real value than he was last year, and you're thanking him for it. It's brilliant, really, if you're the one writing the checks, but if you're the one cashing them, you are getting played.
And this brings us to one of the most misunderstood aspects of modern finance, the difference between being broke and being poor. Broke is a temporary situation where you don't have cash. Poor is a mindset where you don't understand how money works. And ignoring inflation is the ultimate poor mindset trap. Wealthy people, and I mean truly wealthy people, not just people with leased BMWs, they do not hold cash. They know that cash is trash. They know that cash is a melting ice cube. They get rid of cash as fast as possible. They trade it for assets. They buy real estate, stocks, gold, businesses, things that have the potential to rise in price along with inflation. Meanwhile, the average saver is sitting there hugging their melting ice cube, terrified to let go, watching it turn into a puddle. Let me give you a specific example that really highlights this. Think about the housing market. Everyone complains that houses are becoming unaffordable. Oh, my parents bought their house for $30,000 in 1980, and now it's worth $500,000. Real estate is a bubble. Is it though? Or is the house worth the same amount of utility and the dollar has just collapsed in value? The house is still just a pile of wood and bricks. It didn't get 15 times better. The money just got 15 times worse. When you realize this, it shifts your entire perspective. You stop asking, how can I get more dollars? And start asking, how can I store my labor in something that won't rot? But before you rush out and dump your life savings into the first asset you see, we need to talk about the safe investments that are actually dangerous traps in disguise. Because a lot of people try to escape the invisible tax by running straight into the arms of financial products that are arguably even worse. You've probably heard your parents or maybe even a well-meaning financial advisor tell you to put your money in safe places. Government bonds, certificates of deposit, or high-yield savings accounts. They use words like guaranteed and risk-free. And when you're terrified of losing your hard-earned cash, those words sound like a warm blanket. But here is where the math gets really ugly. And here's where most people unknowingly sign up for a guaranteed loss. Let's say you buy a 1-year certificate of deposit that pays you 5% interest. On the surface, that sounds fantastic. You put in $10,000, and the year later, the bank hands you back $10,500. You made $500 without lifting a finger. You feel smart, you feel responsible. But hold on a second. We have to factor in the invisible tax. If inflation is running at 4% during that same year, your real return is only 1%. But wait. It gets worse. The government doesn't care about inflation. They look at that $500 in interest and say, hey, that's income. We want our cut. So if you're in a 20% tax bracket, you owe the IRS $100 of that profit. So now your $500 gain is actually $400. But remember, your purchasing power dropped by roughly $400 due to inflation. So after you pay the tax man and account for the fact that everything is more expensive, you essentially broke even. You locked your money away for a year, you took all that risk-free safety, and you ended up exactly where you started. And that is the best case scenario. In many years, the inflation rate is higher than the interest rate after taxes, which means you are literally paying the bank to hold your money while it rots. This is the trap of nominal safety. You are preserving the number of dollars you have, but you are destroying the value of those dollars. It's like hoarding ice cubes in a freezer that's set to 33 degrees. It feels safe because it's cold, but give it enough time and you're going to be left with a puddle.
Now, you might be thinking, okay, but the stock market is scary. It crashes. I saw what happened in 2008 or 2020. I can't deal with seeing my account drop by 20% overnight. And that is a completely valid emotional reaction. It's called loss aversion. Psychologists have proven that the pain of losing $1,000 is about twice as intense as the pleasure of gaining $1,000. We are hardwired to avoid pain. So we choose the slow, silent death of inflation because it doesn't hurt in the moment. It's the boiling frog analogy. If you throw a frog in boiling water, it jumps out. That's a stock market crash. It's scary, it's sudden, and you react. But if you put a frog in tepid water and slowly turn up the heat, it just sits there until it boils to death. That is inflation. You are the frog, and your savings account is the pot. So how do we actually fight this? If cash is trash and bonds are a trap, where do we go? We have to stop thinking like consumers and start thinking like owners. See, inflation isn't bad for everyone. In fact, for some people, inflation is actually a good thing. Who likes inflation? People who own assets with fixed rate debt. People who own businesses. Think about a company like McDonald's. When the price of beef goes up, and the price of potatoes goes up, and the cost of labor goes up, what does McDonald's do? Do they just say, oh well, I guess we'll make less money this year? No, they raise the price of the Big Mac. They pass those costs directly to you, the consumer. If you are just a customer, you lose. You pay more for the same burger. But if you are a shareholder, if you own a piece of McDonald's stock, you are protected. Because as the company raises prices, their revenue goes up. Their earnings eventually adjust, and their stock price typically rises to reflect the new reality of the currency. The stock market is essentially a machine that passes inflation from the corporation to the consumer. You have to decide which side of that transaction you want to be on. Do you want to be the one paying the higher prices, or the one collecting the profits from them? This is why, over long periods, and I'm talking 10, 15, 20 years, stocks and real estate almost always beat cash. It's not because stocks are magic tickets, it's because stocks represent real businesses selling real things for real money. If money becomes worth less, they just charge more money. It's a natural hedge. Let's look at a concrete example that will probably make you wish you had a time machine. Let's go back to the year 1990. You have $10,000. Scenario A, you are terrified of risk, so you leave that $10,000 in cash, maybe under a mattress or in a checking account. Today, that $10,000 still says $10,000 on the paper, but in terms of what it can buy, it's worth roughly the equivalent of $4,000 in 1990 money. You lost more than half your purchasing power. You got crushed. Scenario B, you took that $10,000 and invested it in an S&P 500 index fund. You didn't try to pick the next Apple or Google, you just bought the whole American economy. You endured the dot-com crash, the 2008 financial crisis, the 2020 pandemic. You watched your account drop 30%, 40%, maybe even 50% at times. It was scary, it was volatile, but you held on. Today, with dividends reinvested, that $10,000 would be worth somewhere around $250,000. Even after you adjust for inflation, you have massively increased your purchasing power. The risky option made you rich. The safe option made you poor.
Here's the thing that really separates the wealthy from the working class. The wealthy redefine risk. To a poor person, risk is volatility, the price going up and down. To a wealthy person, risk is the permanent loss of purchasing power. They don't care if their portfolio dips 10% next month. They care if their money can buy fewer houses, fewer cars, and less freedom in 20 years. They are playing the long game, while everyone else is stressing about next week's weather. But I want to be careful here, because I don't want you to think the solution is just buy stocks and forget it. It's not that simple. There is a right way and the wrong way to do this. And the wrong way can actually destroy your wealth faster than inflation ever could. You see, when people realize inflation is eating their money, they often panic. They start chasing yields.
They see some sketchy crypto token promising 20% returns, or they buy a rental property in a bad neighborhood because real estate always goes up, right? Wrong. Desperation is the enemy of wealth. When you try to outrun inflation by sprinting blindfolded, you are going to run off a cliff. You need a strategy that is boring, consistent, and mathematically sound. You need to understand something called your personal inflation rate. The government says inflation is 3%, but does that really apply to you? If you're trying to buy a house in a hot market, your personal inflation rate might be 15%. If you have 3 kids going to college in 10 years, the inflation rate on tuition is way higher than the price of milk. You are fighting a war on multiple fronts, and the standard advice of just save 10% of your income is like bringing a water pistol to a gunfight. This is where it gets really interesting, because once you understand how to calculate your own exposure to this invisible tax, you can start to structure your life to neutralize it. You can actually position yourself so that when prices go up, you benefit. Imagine a world where you see gas prices rise, and instead of getting angry, you check your portfolio and smile because your energy stocks just paid you a fat dividend. That is financial nirvana. That is where we want to get to. But to get there, we have to stop operating on autopilot. We have to take control of the variables we can change. And the first variable is not how much money you make. It's how much of your money is actually working versus how much is sleeping. Most people have lazy money. Their money is sleeping on the job, snoozing in a checking account, while inflation steals its lunch money. You need to wake your money up. You need to put it to work. Now, I can hear the gears turning in your head. You're thinking, okay, Mr. Invest, I get it. Inflation is bad, stocks are good, but I don't have $10,000 to invest. I'm living paycheck to paycheck. How does any of this help me? And that is the most important objection of all. Because if you don't have a surplus, you can't invest. And if you can't invest, you are a sitting duck for the invisible tax. Here is the brutal truth about the invisible tax. It discriminates. It hits the poor and the uneducated the hardest. If you are living paycheck to paycheck, you cannot simply invest your way out of poverty by throwing $50 at the stock market. You need to increase your shovel. You need to earn more. And I know that sounds like generic advice, but in an inflationary environment, your human capital is actually your single best hedge. Think about it. If the dollar loses 50% of its value over the next decade, but you become 50% more valuable to the marketplace because you learned a high-income skill, you have effectively neutralized the threat. Your labor is an asset that reprices itself daily. If you are stagnant in your career, doing the same job for the same pay year after year, you are essentially holding a bond that pays a fixed rate while inflation rips away your earnings. You need to be a stock. You need to be a growth asset. You need to be the one dictating your price. So here is your immediate battle plan to stop the bleeding and secure your future. Step 1. Stop leaving your emergency fund in a traditional big bank checking account. You are literally lighting money on fire out of laziness. Move that cash to a high-yield savings account immediately. It takes 10 minutes to set up online. You will go from earning 0.01% to 4 or 5%. That alone won't make you a millionaire, but it acts as a shield. It keeps your head above water while you figure out your next move. Step 2. Once you have that 3 to 6 month safety net established, every single extra dollar needs to be deployed into assets. Do not let it sit idle. If you are young, look at low-cost, broad market index funds that track the S&P 500. If you're closer to retirement, maybe look at dividend growth stocks or real estate. But the key is that the money must be moving. Money at rest is money at risk. It sounds counterintuitive, but in this specific economic system, safety is dangerous and movement is security. Step 3. Relentlessly audit your personal inflation rate. Look at where your money actually goes. If your rent is your biggest expense, can you house hack to eliminate it? If your car payment is drowning you,
Can you sell it and buy something reliable with cash? You need to lower your burn rate so you can increase your investable capital. The gap between what you earn and what you spend is your only weapon against the invisible tax. The wider that gap, the faster you win. Ultimately, the invisible tax is a penalty on inaction. It is a fine levied on people who are too scared, too lazy, or too distracted to learn the rules of the game. The system is rigged, yes, but it is rigged in favor of owners and investors. You can choose to stay a victim, complaining about the price of eggs on Twitter, or you can choose to become an owner. You can choose to align your financial future with the very forces that are currently hurting you. The choice is yours, but remember, doing nothing is a choice, and it is the most expensive choice you will ever make. Don't let another year go by watching your hard work evaporate. Take control today. My name is Mr. Invest, and if this video helped you see the matrix a little clearer, please destroy that like button and subscribe for more financial truth. I'll see you in the next one.